In my mind, worlds collide. Something inside me is gone. Still I keep going on.
Hey, what is up guys? This is Awesome here. Welcome back to a brand new video. Today I want to talk about how Gigan fits in the Monsterverse and how he possibly could make an appearance in Godzilla x Kong Supernova. You guys have been killing it with videos, supporting my videos lately with the Space Godzilla videos. If you want to go check those videos out, if you have not seen them, links down below in the description. I absolutely cook with those videos. I also have a Mecha Godzilla video as well, and theorize how Mecha Godzilla can come back in the Monsterverse. And maybe could come back in Godzilla x Kong Supernova, the fight alongside Godzilla Kong against Space Godzilla, which I still think is more likely than Gigan. But to be honest with you guys, I think an original Space Titan made under Legendary is more likely than Space Godzilla. But Gigan is an absolute close third. He is super popular in the kaiju fandom. Everyone who's a fan of kaiju and has not seen very many Godzilla movies know who Gigan is. I would argue that a lot of older audiences recognize Gigan as apparently a lot of the older Godzilla films, mainly the Showa, have aired on cable before. So, you know, a lot of older fellas would recognize Gigan or have a higher chance of recognizing Gigan because they grew up watching cable and probably watching these older Godzilla movies. I mean, if you were introduced to the Godzilla franchise by your father or your parent, you know, just some other parent, like ask them what was their first Godzilla movie or what Godzilla movies they did air on cable, and they probably would tell you Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Megalon. So Gigan, you know, outside of these two camps where it's the hardcore kaiju fans and the older audiences, that still leaves a very huge gap of people who don't recognize Gigan. Gigan is popular, but he's not too popular here in the States, I would argue. Despite him appearing in two eras of Godzilla, the Showa and the Millennium, and of course he's kind of appeared in the short films, the CGI short films following Godzilla's son. Gigan has also appeared in all of the Atari Godzilla games as well, so if there are older gamers out there who have grew up with these games in particular, they would know who Gigan is if they're not already a hardcore kaiju fan. I mean, hardcore is probably harsh, but if you're a kaiju fan in general, you know who Gigan is. If you're not a kaiju fan and you play those old Godzilla games, you might recognize who Gigan. So Gigan's just harder to kind of explain, like, how he would fit in the I mean, he has his place in the Monsterverse. This kaiju would work in the Monsterverse. It just kind of comes down, what I'm trying to talk about in this section of this video is why it would make sense for Legendary to buy this IP. And it's a little harder because Space Godzilla is arguably a more popular character because of his influence here in the States. He's been in video games and comics. Gigan's been in comics too, but Space Godzilla also has been in the old 90s Treadmaster Godzilla figures. So a lot of kids in the 90s have grew up with these Godzilla toys if they had them, and also had Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla it's another version of Godzilla, and that's why it's so easy for them to market Space Godzilla. It's another version of Godzilla. I already went in depth in my Space Godzilla videos. I don't want to go off of it and kind of say it here, but Space Godzilla is way more of a popular character, or at least a more recognizable and easier character to market, and it's a more no-brainer IP to buy from TOHO versus Gigan, because Gigan, rather he has been popular here and there, it's not as easily marketable. But if they were to go buy a license that's not Space Godzilla from TOHO, it likely would be Gigan, because it's such a kick-ass design. Both the Showa and the Millennium are just kick-ass designs. In the short film, with the CGI film, Godzilla vs. Gigan Rex, it implies that there's multiple different Gigans, and there's basically a supreme Gigan out there. So his implications in the Monsterverse are huge. Once he's added to the Monsterverse and they see that there are cyborg space titans, that implies a fuck ton of just lore. Like, audiences are going to sit there and be like, so if that's kaiju has upgraded cybernetics and is from space, that means that civilization has taken this kaiju from another planet, which also confirms the existence, more confirms the existence of space titans, of aliens. We already had that with Ghidorah. Aliens have already been confirmed in the Monsterverse, but this would imply a advanced civilization that are intelligent enough to take titans, take them down, and upgrade them with cybernetics and control them and send them on conquest to go conquer planets possibly. So his implications in the Monsterverse make sense. So I'm kind of leaning into this subject where how Gigan just makes sense in the Monsterverse. I'm leaning away from just the idea of Legendary buying the license. I still think he's likely to be bought, but it's harder. It's a little harder, and I just don't think he is going to appear in Supernova. That is also the topic. The topic being that one day I believe that Gigan will enter the Monsterverse, but I pretty much already talked about that Gigan's most likely not appearing in Supernova, but if he were added to the Monsterverse, it would just make sense of everything I just said about his implications. Just general audiences laying eyes on Gigan, they just know right away that we're in trouble, or our characters are in trouble, because now there are aliens making cyborg titans and sending them to Earth for some reason. That can of worms has already been opened with Ghidorah, but now we know that they're being built for war or conquest. I believe general audiences would latch onto Gigan's design, and if they really wanted to as well, they can introduce multiple different versions of Gigan in a future Monsterverse movie, or hell, it could be Supernova for all I know. If they really wanted to, they could send 3 Gigans to Earth. One that looks like the Millennium Gigan, but with the chainsaw hands. One just a standard Gigan that we see in the Millennium film Godzilla Final Wars, and we can have like a leader of those two, and that can be the classic Showa Gigan. Obviously these would be modernized and have like their own Monsterverse flair to them, but one would be green and gold, and that would be the leader of the two, and those two would just represent the Final Wars Gigan. That would be how I would personally do it, because that way we can have all versions of Gigan that we all know and love modernized and Monsterverse-ized as well. And I think that it would work, because then we would have Godzilla versus Gigan, Kong versus Gigan, the Kong army and Godzilla, and maybe Mechagodzilla versus Gigan. It would just actually be a really kick-ass idea. And of course, the implications. Once there are more than one Gigan sent to Earth, we know that not only do we have to worry about Titans beneath our feet, but now we have to worry about an alien armada above our heads that want Earth for whatever reason. Either way, we're going to get some type of space villain in this movie, and I think that's going to change everything it's going to change everything in the Monsterverse. It already kind of did, but I think at this point the government wants to get rid of the Titans. Probably the entire world wants to get rid of Titans. But once we figure out that there are threats from outer space that have us in their lens, because it's possible that Ghidorah just landed on Earth out of circumstance. Maybe he wasn't necessarily sent out to target Earth specifically. He was just behaving like a invasive species would. But sending a cybernetic enhanced Titan to Earth, such as Gigan, that just opens up a can of worms, and that would have to force humanity to just accept that Titans they have to be around, because not only does Godzilla and the other Titans, or most of them at least, mainly Godzilla and Kong, not only are they here to protect us from just malicious Titans that are originated from Earth, but now they have to act as the white blood cell and defend Earth from intruding Titans as well. Because humanity at this point just doesn't have anything to counter that, unless they do have Mechagodzilla, which, link in the description down below in that video. But yeah, that's all I got for this video, guys. I would be all down for SPACEGODZILLA or Gigan, but the likely truth is it could just well be an original Titan space kaiju made under Legendary as well. But Gigan, he is popular in the kaiju fandom, but it would be a little harder to market versus SPACEGODZILLA just a gold mine of marketing. But Gigan would just work, and he just fits in the Monsterverse. His design, all of his designs, and the lore and implications of this character would do wonders for the Monsterverse. But that is my time, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And as always, stay awesome.